No, Aboukar, welcome all the way from Ankara. The
Thank
floor
you.
is yours. We want to hear about this NFT for Somali artists. Please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for having me. I will go ahead and share the video, and then we can, as planned, have a question and answer sessions where we can discuss further.
No, we can't see you. Can you please switch your video as well? Thank you.
So can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
And then share sound. So this is a video within a video, a bit like Inception, but I hope it is received well. Hi, my name is Nuh Aboukar, and I'll be presenting today's initiative called Lahanshaw. But firstly, I'd like to start off with a welcome message. So it's a great honor to be invited and sponsor the annual Somali Australian Research and Community Symposium. And this theme is a theme that we're particularly interested to and very much fall in line with regarding digital Somalia reimagined in global citizenship. So our initiative is called Lahanshaw, which is all about digital ownership. So before we get into it, I just want to start off with a few definitions and descriptions to make the process easier for us to fully describe what our initiative and what digital ownership is all about. This is all done on a sort of recent technology that was invented alongside Bitcoin called blockchain. It's a system of recording information in a way that makes it difficult or impossible to change, hack, or cheat the system. And it's essentially a digital ledger of transactions that is duplicated across an entire network of computer systems. So this decentralization makes it very hard for it to be hacked or changed, and is a very good record of transactions. This removes the need for a lot of middlemen, and the blockchain space is primarily known for cryptocurrency. So I'm sure everyone's heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum, but also we are now having a new feature to the blockchain space, which is NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, which are unique and non-interchangeable units of data stored on a digital ledger. So a non-fungible token is an asset on the blockchain with a unique identification and metadata that separates them from each other. And unlike cryptocurrencies, they can't be changed equally. They essentially can represent a piece of digital media, anything that can be digital, but also there's a new space for it being able to represent physical assets in the digital world. How does this help digital artists in Somalia? So what we're doing is, through blockchain and NFTs, we're able to tokenize a moment in culture, signifying Somalia's revival through mass awareness of ownership in this new digital economy. This all means that artists in Somalia can now digitalize their work, sell it online, receive revenues, all from their home. This is all part of this new global digital economy. Lahanshaw will be based in Mogadishu. The artists are currently residing in Mogadishu, and through the Lahanshaw initiative, we will allow and enable and empower artists to sell their digital media all around the world. So you can see we highlighted a few hotspots: Turkey, Australia, the UK, Somalia, and the United States. It can go more than that, and it can be all over the world. So there's no real limit to this. and I would love to now get into the details of our initiative and what we are planning on doing. So we are an initiative that will create a community that works to make the NFT space accessible for Somali artists. We provide digital training and tools for artists to mint and monetize their work. And the vision of ours is that we are entering a new digital age. Artists will be able to build on this new creative economy. And it is actually critical that we start this as soon as possible in order to really push this new economy into the mind frames of the Somali people all over the world, so that we are not left behind, or we are in the forefront of the competition for this new creative economy. So what is our project timeline? Well, this is a timeline for our initiative. We have already started. We have already minted NFTs and we have already sold NFTs. However, we are wanting to continue and scale, and our timeline goes similar to this. So this will be a duplicated again and again. So our envision is that we will have different projects, and this is essentially a timeline for each individual project. So the main thing about NFT art is that it requires art. So we will finalize art designs. We are in the process of building our community. So we have a website that we will be able to provide very soon. We will have a Twitter account, we'll have a Discord space, and this will all be part of the hype generation, the community building. The next step will be to partner with marketplaces. Specifically, we've chosen the Cardano blockchain as a place to host the NFTs. This is done for a number of reasons, which we'll get into in the next slide. And then the stage after this is minting NFTs. We want to mint NFTs in the easiest manner, which is one of the reasons we chose the Cardano blockchain. Once the NFTs are minted, then it's about launching the NFTs for sale. So we've already done this process before, and this process will be replicated for every artist that joins the Lahansha initiative. So what is the process? So we mentioned earlier that we've chosen the Cardano blockchain. The reason being is Cardano is an open platform that seeks to provide economic identity to billions who lack it by providing digital and decentralized applications to manage identity, value, and governance. This goes in line with our goals as a nation in order to provide identity and economic inclusion for people all around the world, as well as specifically in Somalia. The second thing is that Cardano, from a very practical sense, is a great alternative to the Ethereum blockchain in terms of its much lower transactions costs. So this is a lower lower barriers to entry for a Somali artist. This is very important. Will allow us to scale, produce a lot of NFTs, and really promote the artwork within the Cardano ecosystem. The second thing is that as part of the onboarding of digital artists, we're not only providing a space for an entry into the decentralized finance. So we want to talk about the project process. So what is the onboarding of artists going to be like? So the first step is that each artist will download a Cardano blockchain compatible wallet. So this wallet will enable the artist to receive and send Cardano's cryptocurrency called ADA, as well as receive and send NFTs. As part of the minting process, you'll need some form of ADA in order to cover the transaction costs. Also, Euro Wallet is the official light wallet for Cardano via mobile and internet browser extensions. So it's essentially a very good wallet for the Cardano blockchain, very secure, and enables NFTs. The next step would be to connect to our partner Cardano NFT marketplaces. This will enable artists to then launch and auction for sale their NFTs that they have in their wallets. The third step is to actually create the digital assets. So whether the artist already has artwork that is digitalized and ready to go, or whether they need some process of changing, for example, a painting into a piece of digital art, or turning a physical piece of art into a digital piece of art, that will then enable the art to be digitalized. Step 4 is to go through the minting process. This is where we primarily, Lahansha Initiative, will really come in to assist this technical part of essentially how to mint NFTs. There are also further developments in this space, such as part of the process of minting NFTs, we'll put into the metadata or into a specific smart contract royalties, which will now enable revenues from the secondary market. This means that if an artist sells a piece of work to a collector, that collector then ends up selling it to another collector, that the artist will receive some sort of revenue for secondary sales and all sales thereafter. Once the NFTs are minted and they are linked to a piece of digital art, then it's all about listing the NFTs on the marketplace for sale. So this is the process of actually allowing people to purchase their NFTs, which will mean that the artist will receive Cardano directly into their personal wallet. So this is the initial process for onboarding artists. I'd just like to go to the beginning of our slide and talk about what Lahansha is. So we are, as we said before and went into detail, digital ownership initiative for Somali artists. And as you can see, this piece of digital art is one of the examples of an artist that we work with called Lil Waria, who was able to digitalize. We took him through the entire onboarding process, and within 8 hours from the time that his NFT was listed on the marketplace, it was sold. So it's a real exciting opportunity for artists in Somalia to be able to commercialize their work in a way that has never been able before. And we are really excited to be part of this process with them. So finally, I'd just like to say thank you again to be invited to the symposium. We can take questions and answers. And if you're interested in what we do and think that you can help us in any way or promote, please feel free to contact us, and I'm sure we will be ready to receive you. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Well, thank you, Aboukar. That was a very interesting presentation. And now I would like to open the floor for questions and comments from everyone, those of you who are online now and those of you who are watching via Facebook. So the floor is yours. Any questions, comments? Hassan, yes, please go ahead. Hello. Hassan, you're still
Can I
muted.
jump in while Hassan
Yes,
is still?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Hassan first and then you, Abdulzakir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Just one quick question to Noor. The term art could be broad. It could include painting, music, literature, dance, and so on. Is this platform only good for paintings and drawings, or it could also include other forms of art?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Hassan. I think currently at the moment, the NFT space is primarily for digital art, so sort of digital drawings, so similar to paintings, things that normally people would hang on a wall, for example. But the technology itself and the potential means that it could be for all forms of arts. So it could be for music as well as anything that can be digitalized. So any form of, so if someone was to digitalize a piece of a dance, for example, then you could sell the NFT of the dance. It's something that actually recently the NBA have done, where they have this Top Shots moment where people are buying memorable moments where, for example, NBA player dunks. So it's things like that are, the NFT space is still quite new, so there's a lot of potential, but at the moment it's just specifically used for art. So I think that's the first good step into it, and then you can see how it goes as things develop.
Abdulrazak, you have a good question.
Thank you, Nuh, for your presentation. It's really interesting, that you have taken this, opportunity, at least, to make the Somali artists heard around the world. That's good. I would like to ask you a quick question. How are you going to check, you said that you're going to have office in Mogadishu, the authenticity of the art that you're selling, are you going to go, people can, sell things, but, how do we check the authenticity, whether the person that's selling or bringing this art work is the right person, like, for example, this is just a simple question, that I needed to figure out, because as far as in Somalia, we struggle a lot of, identification issues, and basically that's one of the primary issues we had. How are you going to overcome, into that sort of issues, in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that needs to be carefully thought about. There are mechanisms to allow artists to go through some sort of verification process, where you sort of need to backtrack and see who the artist is and whether they actually are producing digital work that is their own work, and they aren't just copying it off the internet and claiming that it's their work, and then we are minting it for them. I think that can be a problem, and it is an issue within this space because it's so recent and unregulated at the moment. So I guess the best way to sort of combat that is to, really have an onboarding process that requires some sort of verification and some sort of character check and community building. And that's why the community building is so important, because, we form personal relationships, although it's all digital. We want to put the artists, we see them as our friends. So it's people that we know, we trust, and we're helping.
Awesome.
This question is for Alqadi. Thanks for the presentation. I just want to know, how can you make this Brickcoin viable? What do you need? Do you need certain number of participants? Do you need certain amount of money to invest? What would it take to, say, build housing in a village or a town in Somalia? And how could you make this whole thing sustainable?
That's a really good question. So right now, currently, there are a lot of models being built across Africa, and it has been found that building these homes can add up to equate to anywhere about $10,000 to $15,000 as a whole. So, but the most important thing here, besides that, is what Noah spoke about. It's about community engagement. It's about teaching the community a new way of doing things. So we want to be able to teach the community not to go out there and cut trees or use corrugated iron or any other things that are going to affect the environment and later on the community in itself. But what we want to do is take that next step to be able to grow and teach people the relevant knowledge. But not only that, so that they can gain employment opportunities as well by being certified within the system in itself. Now, this system is designed to be decentralized. So whoever wants to come on board and take that opportunity as a builder, they can get a lot of contracts or jobs within the system. So projects will be rolled out, and then communities can come into and buy, as if the same way you would be buying a house from any other website out there. But you know, there's a lot more involved. You're using the purchase of real-time money, so you're buying on the spot. But not only that, there's a lot of space. This is being worked out at the moment. Houses can be, you know, broken down into an NFT category where people can rent to buy that NFT. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mohammed, I would just like to ask you a simple question about, you know, you said one of your slides, there was some sort of a, you know, you said there will be some sort of a credit checks, you know. Also, this is just a question that relates to what I asked Mr. Noor, you know, and basically, are you going to be collaborating with how are you going to be checking the credit check? How can you trace someone's credit, you know, in an environment where, you know, for example, in Somalia, are you going to be collaborating with the remittance services, or how is it going to work out?
So thank you, Abdulrazak. That's a very, very good question. So with anything, there has to be a starting point. So some data that we gather now is better than no data at all. So whether we start gathering this data now and we remember, this is a starting point, yeah? But if you look at this data as it grows in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, you're actually going to get really credible data from that. And by creating a system that allows you to get that data, you can make future decisions and actually look into risk assessments a little bit more so that you can be able to scale the project even further.
Any other questions? So there are a few other people I want to acknowledge who are joining us. Jabri from the US and Fatimo from Nairobi. I think they were keen on asking some questions to Noah, but I'm just allowing a few more minutes before we allow Hassan to talk to us about the social media and what have you. So any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead, Jabri.
Yeah, hello everybody coming late. So I'm following the question asked by Nuh, I think, regarding the NFT authenticity. In regards of Minister of Information, the Somalia has a copyright law just passed by the cabinet approved by the parliament a year ago. So would that be any help regarding NFT if you want to deal with authenticity, that people can copyright their items? Is there an opportunity there? I'm just thinking, just a hypothetical question.
Yeah,
Would that be helpful?
I definitely think that's helpful. I think copyright law and NFTs are so far removed from regulation at the moment that if there is some sort of way to connect the copyright law with ownership of an NFT, so the creator of the creator of the NFT, the initial artist that created the NFT, will be the person that also has the copyright, and then thereafter the person who owns the NFT is the owner of the NFT, so they have the ownership but the copyright still remains with the artist. To link those two concepts together, I think is something that could be really powerful, and actually it will be very interesting to find out the law.
Oh yeah, I am involved with the Ministry of Information as an advisor, so the copyright is there. It has been passed, it's legal, so we can give you, and that's just a starting point, because that's the only way you can go through in Somalia. I remember Hassan said, where can you start? You go to Somalia, authenticity, to be authentic is an issue, but it will be a good start if you just go with that copyright law and people tell you, hey, if you want to prove that it's yours, go to the Ministry of Information and do 1, 2, 3, 4, then we can accept your item.
Yeah.
So
It'll be interested to see if to use the NFTs in the technical aspect of the copyright itself, right? So that there could be some sort of connection there between how do people own, how is the proof of a copyright through owning the NFT. So there's I think that's something very exciting. Thank you. I'll definitely want to contact you and to speak about the copyright law.
Okay.
Well, that's very interesting point. I think it's beyond NFT. In fact, the whole IB and copyright. If you go through YouTube and you hear all the Somali music or films or what have you, and anyone can use them. There's no protection at all. So I'm very happy to hear, Jabri, that actually some legal structure is happening. So that might help the Somali artists back home. Are there any other comments or questions? I want to welcome and acknowledge also, I think Fatuma joined us from Nairobi. So if there are any questions, comments, please.
Yes, assalamu alaikum, and hey everyone, I'm blackout. Start helping. Already spoken really how this I graduated in 2018.
I'm sorry, Fatuma, we can hardly hear you. It's very bad line. Can you hear us? Hello? Fatuma, we can hardly hear you. I'm sorry, but can you repeat again? I think we lost Fatuma. I think this is a technical challenges there. We'll continue. I think what I want to do now is invite Hassan. And Hassan was supposed to speak earlier, but it's been a long day for me. So what I really want to do is I'll stop recording and start again, because this last session, oh, Fatuma is back. Fatuma, yeah, continue.
Sorry about that, y'all. I was connected to the wrong Wi-Fi as I was reconnecting, but just a short summary. I'm really excited to be here. I've only been in Nairobi for a few weeks. Hope to visit Somalia soon, inshallah, and just kind of get involved in any projects going on. So excited to, hopefully with no more blackouts the rest of the weekend, join the rest of these sessions. So thanks for having me.
Welcome. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll go to the last, I guess, presentation or discussion with Hassan, and then we'll conclude for the day. But perhaps I'll just continue. We won't even stop. I was trying to stop the recording, but we might as well continue. We can edit later on. So Hassan, welcome. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you. Sorry, I had a bit of an internet issue myself.
But my presentation will not be as slick and as some of my previous colleagues, but I'll try my best.
But if you can see you, that would
what-
be useful if you don't mind. But otherwise, yeah, it's an optional. You're hiding.
No, because I'm using my mobile. So I'm
Oh, okay,
holding.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me see if I can turn it on.
Perfect, perfect.
Okay. So what I want to talk about is how social media in Somalia is impacting politics and conflict, and to some extent how it's undermining the rule of law and the way the country is run. And I want to pinpoint a couple of things before I do that. And one is what's causing it. So the cause of this can be divided into two. One would be, I want to mention the traditional media in Somalia, and then I'll come to the social media. And I will also mention a little bit about the way governments or authorities in Somalia communicate with the people. And once I briefly describe those two, then I'll come to the social media. So Somalia, as we know, there are a number of privately owned and run television or media outlets. These are generally outlets who are there to make money. And what that means is, because there are no real laws covering media in the country, they can essentially broadcast anything. So there's no limitation, there's no red line. There is no risk of defaming someone. There is no editorial standard. Journalists generally are not given trainings. I don't know if there are any journalistic or media colleges and universities in Somalia, I'm not sure. But generally what we know is in Somalia, it's enough to have a microphone and a camera to call yourself a journalist. That's essentially what you need. And if you learn how to take a video and edit it, say whatever you want, that's good enough. So in those shortcomings, and in a country where the news are not expected to be verified, there are no particularly very credible sources of information. These are what's causing social media to run fake news. So the other gap, or the other reason why social media works the way it works in Somalia, is the way government communicates with people. So when you start from the top, the president, the prime minister, and the ministers, they don't see talking to people or giving interviews to media is part of their task or part of their responsibility. And it looks from distance as though for authorities and government and the leaders, silence is good strategy. So don't say anything, don't talk to anybody. And again, that is where the social media thrives. When you don't have anything from the leaders, from the prime ministers and ministers and presidents and state leaders and police chief or whoever it is in that particular event, then the social media thrives. So you would have people who would call themselves journalists, they come on social media, spew all sort of misinformation, spew vile in the worst description. There are people who are doing all that just to get kicked out of it. There are people who think by just saying whatever comes out of your mouth, you become famous. In some instances, that's how they make money, generate income. there are a lot of people who are seeking clickbaits, and especially when you know you're not accountable to anybody, no one will be held accountable. I have never seen, or you never hear someone in Somalia prosecuted for defaming someone, for example. You never hear that. And in the social space, social media space in Somalia, online bullying is rife. People love and like to provoke others. There are a lot of hateful rhetorics. There are people who thrive in creating controversies. Someone like me who's in the media, it's even hard to distinguish what's real and what's fake. So imagine the average Somali person in Somalia or overseas who's bombarded with Facebook posts of things which looks news, but it's not news, rumors, abuse, malicious comments, and you never have someone who's criminally prosecuted for that. So I think that social media misinformation is undermining the way Somalis govern themselves. Because when you don't have rule of law in the country, there is no rule of law in the way media covers things. For example, if there is a bomb explosion somewhere in Somalia, there is no ethical way of covering it. Those journalists or the people in the media who are near the scene of the explosion would not know how to cover it. So you would see sometimes terrible photos of dismembered bodies of people posted across the social media, simply because there's no law against it. The people who are putting on social media are not trained, and it's free for all. And it's a terrible indictment in the way the whole thing is done. So when there is no credible traditional media with balance and context and fairness and integrity, that vacuum is filled by those individuals. And it becomes a total competition and race on how bad do you have to be to become famous in the social media landscape within the Somali society. I don't think there are other communities or societies who use social media the way Somalis do. It's widespread, it's very prevalent, and it's really causing a lot of headache socially, politically, and legally. What would be the solution? What I think is, again, building and creating a good and credible traditional media would address some of those issues. Secondly, politicians, people in authority, people in power who come out and talk to people and face the questions people have would also reduce the prevalence of the fake news in the social media. So that's my take on the way social media and media in general works in Somalia and the risk of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Hassan. We'll now open the floor for any questions or comments. So as usual, please just raise your hand and fire, or maybe that's not the right word, ask.
Yeah, sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand. Where is the? Oh, here it is. Raise hand.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Go ahead, Peter.
Found
Go
it.
ahead.
This is Peter here. Thanks, Hassan, for that presentation. Very interesting. I was wondering, as you say, there is no regulation of that space in Somalia, no laws stopping people from doing some of the things you described, showing horrible scenes of dismembered bodies, for example. So if you have a country like Somalia where these processes, institutions are not in place, that responsibility would fall to the social media companies like Facebook and others to try and clean up that space and remove content like that. They claim they are doing that, not specifically with regards to Somalia, but in general. But as we all know, they're widely criticized for, whether they're doing enough in that direction. How much confidence would you have that the social media companies themselves would be able to play a role in that? How much of a role are they playing when it comes to content like that being generated in Somalia? Is that being addressed? Do they find this content, and what are they doing about it?
Thank you, Peter, for that question. Someone have the mic on. Thank you for the question. If I have confidence in the way social media themselves would fix this, zero. I have no confidence at all. And the simple reason is when you have a Facebook who have been accused of facilitating fake news in order to make money, and I'm referring to one of the executives who was taking part in the Senate hearing in USA, who said, yeah, that's actually what they do. Imagine if they do not understand the language of the posts, and that's the biggest issue with the Somali social media outlets. Even if I see a post which I think contravenes Facebook's guidelines and standard, and I refer it to them, I have no doubt they will not do anything about it, because I don't think they have someone who speaks Somali, and I don't think they will seek someone to translate for them. So the chance of that being addressed is zero, which is unfortunate, because the millions of posts, millions of people who speak the language, and they could afford hiring people from every cultural background and every language. But as far as I know, I don't think Facebook employs someone who speaks Somali language. And again, that's big issue. So on the social media space within Somali community, you can hear and see literally anything. People inciting violence, people who speaking divisive language in a country where there are no real court system, where there's no real police force, where there's no people who are calling arms rebellion against the states or governments or whatever. But they know the irony though, Peter, is majority of those social media trolls, if I call them, are based outside Somalia. A lot of them are based in Europe, in North America, in Middle East, not necessarily Middle East, but could be even in Australia and New Zealand. But because they speak Somali, they know Facebook will not come after them. They literally say whatever comes out of their mouth with impunity, unfortunately. So yeah, I don't have any confidence in Facebook or other social media doing anything about it, unless and again, my only solution, the only solution I can see is traditional media in Somalia taking a better role, and politicians and people in power also taking their role in talking to the people and communicating better. And those social media trolls would lose track if that were the case.
Interesting. You're saying
I have-
it even starts with the language barrier. You know that's where the
Yeah.
problem starts, that they don't address it. Yeah.
Be-
Thanks.
Bit of if I just add a couple of ideas
Question.
here, there is yes, the language issue is, yes, that's a barrier and it's a challenge, but there's also another element that really we need to think about. See, when the banks, whatever you call the Facebook, Apple, and those big, the Googles and so on, when they have impact on a country, it's the government that reacts. We know, for example, the Australian government, some of those big companies were challenged in the courts. In Europe, they were even fined seriously. In Somalia, the part of the problem is the authority itself is not that strong. The government is not that strong. And some of the people who should be dealing with them, their credibility might be also not that high. So that is part of the problem. In other words, if there was a Somali government that can challenge them or can even advise them, because we have this violence issue, we have groups of people who, as Hassan said, are really causing huge problem on social media, but there's no one to report them. If you as an individual report them, Facebook has no time for, small fish, someone arguing about another group. But if the government was credible, or the ministry or someone can write to Facebook, I'm sure Facebook will take it seriously, because I don't think it's anyone's interest to promote some violent people who are killing people every day. But that's also part of the issue. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, I have a question. A comment. Hello.
Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead, Jabir.
Yeah, Hassan, thanks for the presentation. For me, I have been in the media also. I have a different take on that. The problem with social media, first of all, it's not a uniquely Somali issue. It is a worldwide problem. And the social media is just getting, by the day, it's increasing every day. So the latest study I read, they say MSM, mainstream media, will not be around next 10 years. Social media is reality. It's a double-edged sword. It is good. It has socially impacted the economy, everything, but it's going nowhere. It's just increasing. Mainstream media, as we know today, New York Times was taken as an example. They have lost revenue, almost 50%. And they will be losing by the day, by the month. Mainstream media will not be around next decade, as they predicting now, especially with this metaverse, whatever Facebook is coming up with, will be living, as they say, in the reality. There will not be a need for a middleman that will monitor the news. We might not see CNN, NBC, and that in the next decade. Decentralization of the whole media, in a way, it has impact. Coming back to Somalia, yes, there are these issues, but it's a double-edged sword. I don't want to look from the ethical and the moral point of view. From the democratization aspect of it, social media has impacted the democratization process in Somalia because it took the narrative from the government's hand. A nation that is coming back from civil society, from civil war. What if scenario when the government has the control of the whole media, where the control is the narrative? In a way, it was the democratization or liberalization of the media waves. You can look at it from positive side. Yes, it has a very negative impact, but you look from the good side. The media is decentralized. We grew up, Mohammed knows that in Somalia, where the government was the only voice, where they control the narrative. Today, it's different. Media is decentralized. If I have a complaint against Somali president, I can just go social media. I have young Somali media influencers. A 20-year-old guy who lives with his mom has a 1.2 million followers. It has more impact than President Formaggio. So in a way, if you look the good side, it has a good side of it. And Somalia is not uniquely special. It's not a unique problem for Somalia only. Not only Somalia, United States of America is having the same problem with social media. If you take an example for what Donald Trump did to social media, we cannot control, regardless what we do. And I like to emphasize the democratization aspect of the social media is helping Somalia. It is very, very important. You cannot imagine a media controlled by the government, one narrative, one story. It's just a nightmare. The other aspect of it, the moral value, the ethics. I know it's a bad, but if you give and take, I think I will go with the governance issue. And if we come back to censorship, and again, government will have the authority, what's good, what's bad. I don't want to give anybody to be in that position of determining what people can say and do. We can come from the business aspect of it. Let people do the self-censorship, like what's happening to Facebook now. There can be legislations, they can be forced. But when it comes to censorship, it's just really dangerous. Somalia is in a chaos, and the social media has a bad side, but I think it has more positive aspect to it. We are seeing people expressing their views, democratization process, there are debates everywhere. And what if scenario, if that was not all there, it would have been a doomsday. So just only that's my take on it. Thank you.
That's a different perspective. That's what democracy is all about. We allow all sorts of different ideas. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I have
Yeah, I
one
just
comment.
wanted to say, oh, go ahead, Noor. Sorry.
No, actually, Fatima, Fatima, you go first, please. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say really quickly, I agreed with everything Hassan was saying. I didn't return after my internship at Facebook in 2016 because I was working on their ads team and had like a little bell for every time the Trump campaign outspent and every time the Clinton campaign outspent. So they really have no motivation to solely focus on Somalia. And I could probably count on one hand how many other Somalis work there, and nobody was working on their civic tech team. So I do feel like possibly there could be a cultural change, like you said, Hassan, training those with influence, those who are elected leaders to come out and speak, just like we have our Secretary in the States, Jen Psaki, speak and answer questions. We could also just have a general cultural shift. I think there are people at Facebook and Google that are paid very poorly. They're called moderators to look at these violent videos and take them down. But they, A, could only look at so much, and B, there's a high turnover rate with them. You could only imagine your job is to sit down and for 8 or however so many hours, you're looking at horrible imagery and you're not getting paid well and you're not getting the support, mental health support, et cetera, from these big tech companies that could obviously give them. So if that is their way of dealing with it, just hiring individuals rather than coming together with, like you said, inviting Somalis to the table and coming up with, they have the engineers come up with the algorithms that can recognize these certain violent videos. Or once a video starts getting reposted often, it's really easy to catch. So I think if we kind of make some more noise as a culture, as a community, to call out those who are obviously abroad, you can kind of track them and say, hey, you're allowing them to come into our community. They're thousands of miles away. We're not going to listen to you. And B, these terms, misinformation, disinformation, they're not used as often. So kind of making it easier to understand for the everyday social media user on why it's so harmful, I think would be a big thing. And if any of you guys start working on these things, please let me know, as disinformation is a really interesting thing to me. So I'd love to help out.
All right. Well, thank you, Fatima. Any other comments? No, you were trying to take the floor. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a question, just really a comment, but as well a question. And maybe Hussein might be able to know a bit of this. But does Somalia have some GDPR regulations or sort of data protection acts? Because as well as social media, Facebook shouldn't be synonymous with social media. So we have other social media platforms, and with cryptocurrencies and this new space of blockchain, there's even a sort of a trend towards actually decentralizing the Facebooks itself and other similar social media platforms, so that we'll be able to sort of the comment that Mohammed was saying. So the scale of Facebook compared to the Somali government is large, but as we decentralize or break down these social media platforms, if that happens, then the governments can more easily regulate, and there's more of a trusting relationship between the platforms and the people and the communities. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting take. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, as a community, there has to be some things that we accept and things that we don't accept. And it's important that we pass our message on to the world, but it all starts from awareness. And this topic is a huge topic. Really, the effect of it, the social engineering effect of it is huge. And the way that it actually filters down to local communities and how they communicate and whatnot. So it does have a positive, but also a negative. If you outweigh the positive and the negative, if you look at it, the positive outweighs it. However, it's almost like we're chasing our own tail. So we have to have some sort of governance and censorship to some sort of degree. And that has to come to community coming together and us saying, what do we accept and what we don't accept? And then passing that message on to the government or the legislators and so on. Now, because the world's moving into a decentralized world, we have other opportunities to manage this, as Noah was saying. But not just that, technologies in itself. The old age of having or controlling the internet itself is about to become redundant. There's new technologies coming out today where you can have access to the internet to rural communities without them, using the old systems. So moving forward, I think it all comes down to awareness and ultimately governance. Thank you.
All right. I think we'll allow one more comment or question, and we have to wrap up. It's been a long day. Any last comment, last question?
Maybe if I can add, I think my whole point of this is, in terms of the way we use social media, we have no standard. There's no standard. There's no so-called red line. And I can understand the argument of democratization and the freedom people have to comment on politics of the country, criticize politicians. That's fine, absolutely good. But what's happening in Somali context is there are more fake news than real news on social media platforms here. And if you compare that, and again, it's hard to compare Somalis with Australians. We just had a case here in Australia where a young YouTuber said something about the Deputy Premier of New South Wales, and the deputy took that as a defamatory. He took the young YouTuber to court, and he was forced to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had to apologize. Now, how many defamatory posts are put on social media, whether it's Facebook or Snapchat within the Somali community? I mean, it's so prevalent. It's everywhere. The fake news is everywhere. The abuse is everywhere. The harassment, the bullying is everywhere. And unfortunately, even social media consumers or news consumers from our community are drawn to this. So if I were to come in and say, this is what happened, and I verified it, and I talked to someone, maybe I wouldn't get a lot of traction. But if I spew all sorts of things, I can make myself famous within a month by just spewing lie after lie. And that's the biggest issue within our community, unfortunately. Until we address those and we set a guideline and we put a red line somewhere, we say, now you can't cross this, either through just marketplace. If we say, hey, if the person is saying this, he lies today and lies tomorrow, don't watch them third day or fourth day. But that's hard. And there's no regulation, there's no courts, there's no legal system. It's just a marketplace of vile and fake news. That's my issue. But I can understand and appreciate the democratization part of things, and I understand that.
Yeah, well, thanks, Hassan. I think my only contribution here is maybe we should think about solutions as well. What can we do to help? Okay, we identified the problem. We almost all agree it's a disaster. We cannot watch this anymore. We cannot listen. In fact, Hassan and I talk about this off the record. And there was a case we were talking about where I think someone based in Canada, to summarize that issue, that person received some gifts through Facebook. He himself didn't know. I won't name names here, but he didn't know what was happening. But actually, Facebook was using that person to make more money from what they were doing for him. So the mistakes made, I'll just enumerate for you. The mistakes made, you won't believe. First of all, he was advertising one more time for Facebook, for what Facebook did for him. And then to make it even worse, the people who paid him, I don't know whether you remember Hassan's story, but there were people who paid him some money. Not only he mentioned that the people gave him money, but he also put their names and their faces through the Facebook. So that was another problem, that he was embarrassing them or about the data privacy and all those problems. So if you analyze it, there were so many mistakes made. So someone mentioned the word awareness. That's what's really missing, awareness and education level. Now, I want to share with you another story that, again, you might be interested to know. Here in Melbourne, Australia, I know some of you are in Europe and America and in Africa. So there was a study through the university where social media analysis. And this particular one was about the African community, and more specifically about the Somali community. Because what we were trying to figure out was, what do people talk about on social media? Now, the project had two outcomes were expected. One was, first of all, yes, academic exercise of what were people talking about, but the other agenda was also to see if there is a way we can communicate with those people. So let's just pick Twitter, for example. So the noise, or I will call noise or rubbish that people distribute or talk about on Twitter, but only in Melbourne and Victoria was analyzed, but specifically the African community, and again, narrowing down to the Somalis. The methodology was very simple. We were using some words, Somali words, because most likely other people will not use Somali words. I don't think Peter will be using Somali word in Twitter. He will know Somali. So most likely only Somalis will be using Somali words. And then we put 10 words. Now, I don't want to really tell you the whole story, but it was, let's just say it was horrific to know what people talk about or discuss or share only on Twitter, because the others, they have more stricter ways to get that information. Now, I'm quite happy to share the data with you, but the objective was to educate, to help, to raise awareness and say, look, first of all, there's no privacy here. And then secondly, there are better things to do if you really want to talk about these issues, and also then to inform and say some of this were actually lies or fake news, especially about the vaccination and COVID and what have you. So yes, it's an interesting area, very fertile area for research. That's what young people like Fatuma who want to study or work in this area. And I will encourage people to continue, but keeping in mind, really our interest is to help. How can we help, whether our community here or back home in Somalia, whether it's through education and through other projects. And that's really where I want to conclude in today's day one of our event. We still have day two tomorrow, but only half a day. Tomorrow is also very interesting. We have Professor Saunders from Melbourne University. We were lucky today to have both from Monash and the Swinburne University representatives. But tomorrow is really a big issue or big event or a highlight for us. Why? Because Cheryl Saunders, those of you who know, she's an expert in the field of constitution and federalism and other areas. So we're very lucky to have her on a Sunday morning for her to join us and talk to us about federalism and the challenges Somalia is facing. So I'll encourage you all to join us, whether you're local or whether you are from outside Melbourne, because it will be really an event not to be missed, that 1 hour with Professor Saunders. And then we also have Jabiri, who will join us from the US, who is launching the water initiative now. We have water problems back home. We know the droughts and what have you. So I'm glad also to hear what Jabiri has to tell us tomorrow. So it's only half a day. Please welcome, come back, and let's talk about that. Now, if there are no other comments and questions from you, or maybe I should ask you, are there any other comments or questions before I summarize today's event?
More for me.
Yeah, go ahead, Jabri.
Regarding Hassan, I just want to emphasize the point that I was coming and emphasizing was so in particular Somalia, because being member of the Somali committee who drafted the media law, the word censorship rings a bell. It's just very painful growing up in a very undemocratic society, let's say revolutionary era and all that. When the Somali authority were given the chance to control the mainstream media or the social media, they overextend their power. So even there were times they ordered to block all video downloads from the social media. The telecommunication companies were ordered, Mohammed knows that, where the students were not able to download a video. And I know they were fighting pornography and all that and gambling, but there could have been guidelines or other ways to monitor instead of just ordering blank regulation and rules or censorship. I'm just emphasizing that I know misinformation is very harmful, very dangerous. It can be used for different, kinds of crimes, with fraud, wire fraud, trafficking, prostitution, gambling, so many things. I agree with you on that point. I mean, the misinformation. But the point I was coming on, just to emphasize again, the censorship aspect. For example, a good example I can give you, Ethiopia, they have banned the social media for 3 days during the election because they were trying to control the narrative. Somaliland did the same thing in the election time. They controlled it. They blocked it. There was no social media for 3 days. Why? Oh, people are going to say bad things about the election. Ethiopia did, Somaliland did. So overextending the authority of the government sometimes is very dangerous. I was just coming to that point. Thanks.
No, I think point made. Do you want to react, Hassan, or anyone else for that matter?
Yeah, I just like to just add one point to it. So as a community, there needs to be some sort of governance that we have to accept. We really don't need to get to the point of failure, which is what Hassan is talking about. And then there's real problems. Facebook does have the algorithm. They've got everything there. They've got all the data there. But unfortunately, are we approaching them as a community? Are we aware? Are we raising community awareness? Is there some sort of movement behind this? But yet again, I agree with what Hassan's saying. You know, we need to move away from the old government systems that we've had and you know, become a little bit more, you know, 21st century government. So what my point here is that there needs to be a balance here, and it has to come from the community. There's, yet again, I'll point out, awareness is the key to this. Thank you.
Well, all right. Well, thank you very much. I guess to hear the community's voice where we live, we're lucky. At least we can go through our local MPs, and the system allows from downstairs to upstairs communication. But in Somalia, Hassan and I know very well, I guess that might not be possible. We are going through very messy time, I guess, but I'm optimistic. I think I'm wearing my Somali T-shirt, so I'm very optimistic that Somalia will come back, and we will go. This is just a patch time we're going through, but we will come out good. So if there are no other comments, it's been a long day, but it's been a very, very productive day. We started the day with Vera Lang telling us about telecommunication regulations in Somalia. That video is already up on WhatsApp and on Facebook and also on YouTube. So those of you who missed it, please watch. And Peter, I can tell you the questions are already overwhelming. I don't know whether you have the time to answer them all, but a lot of feedback. So I won't say you're very popular or unpopular in Somalia, but should I say just you are a person of interest. Let's just leave it there. So I'll share the comments back with you, but you can also see it on the Facebook page itself what people are writing. But all good though. To be fair, it's all good, and I'm happy with that. And then we had Dr. Carson from Monash University, who gave us interesting perspective about the technology and cybersecurity and what have you. And then we also moved on, and there were more discussions. We had Hero from Tokyo, we had Aboukar from Ankara, we had Mohammed Alqadi talking about cryptos, we had Hassan telling us about the social media and what have you, and all your contributions, Liban, Fatumo in Nairobi. So I want to thank you all. There was also Dr. Anwar from Monash University who also joined us. So a lot of presentations, a lot of interesting ideas, but they will be all online and you can all watch as we go. And please come back tomorrow for half a day. Tonight, I have the authority, I'm told that Alqadi will give us dinner if we make to his restaurant, but you can't make it all over the place, but I will. And then tomorrow also there's lunch, and inshallah I will also be there, Mohammed. So thank you, very interesting day. Well, we'll catch up again tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, see you.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, see you, bye.